This is the last lesson of Chapter 3, dividing decimals by decimals. The previous lesson we divided decimals by whole numbers, so now we're going to look at what do we do if we have decimals in the dividend and a decimal in the divisor. So let's look at our first example. We have 4 97/100 divided by 1 1/10. It says down here that this number, 1 1/10, which is the divisor, needs to be a whole number. So we can't start division without this being a whole number. So if you see a decimal here, we need to do something to turn this into a whole number. So what we're going to do is move the decimal one spot to the right. Or if this went to the 100th spot, we would move the decimal over as many times as we would need to make this a whole number. So I'm going to move it over one spot to the right. The next side says if you move the decimal in the divisor, which we just did, you also need to move the decimal in the dividend. So this is where it was originally, 4 97/100. Since you move the decimal one spot in the divisor, move it one spot in the dividend. Or if we had moved this 2 spots here, we would move it 2 spots here. But because we only moved it once, we're going to move it once in the dividend. So if I move it once over to the right, now I have 49 7/10. So this next example, 49 7/10 divided by 11. So after moving the decimals, now you can divide. We are going to divide like normal and bring the decimal straight up. So again, if there's a decimal in the house, raise it to the roof. And if it helps you to make that multiples table, 1 times 11, 2 times 11, 3 times 11, that is fine. You can do that. You should have your numbers 1 through 12 of your fact table memorized. So I'm not necessarily going to make a table for this. If this were 13, 14, or 15, I might do that. But because I know my multiples of 11, I am not going to make a multiple table. So we're just going to divide like we normally would. 11 can go into 49 4 times. Multiply. 4 times 11 is 44. Subtract. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 11 can go into 57 5 times. Multiply. 5 times 11 is 55. Subtract. And what I am going to do is add a couple more trailing zeros. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 11 can go into 20 once. Multiply. 1 times 11 is 11. Subtract. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 11 can go into 98 times. 8 times 11 is 88. Subtract, and you can see I have a 2, so I would keep getting 20, and this would be repeating. So I'm just going to stop there, and I'm going to leave my answer with 4 518 thousandths. Alright, let's look at our next example. We have 2 3/10 and 6 26/100. So we say this like 6 26/100 divided by 2 3/10. Again, I cannot have a decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to move it over one time to make it a whole number. Move the decimal over as many times as you would need to make that number a whole number. Because I only moved it over once, in my dividend, I'm only going to move it to the right once. So now I have essentially 62 6/10 divided by 23. So I can go ahead and make my multiples. You probably hear my dog barking in the background. Say hi to Demby. You probably think someone is at the door. There's not. So I'm going to go again and do my multiples all the way to 9. Okay, so and then I just fill in my table. So 23 times 2, or I can add 23, which would be 46. 46 plus 23, which would be 69. 69, or 4 times 23, I can do that over on the side here. 23 times 4 92, 92 plus 23, 115, 115 plus 23, 138, 138 plus 23 is 161, 161 plus 23, 184, and 184 plus 23 is 207. So now I have my table, so I'm going to go ahead and go back over to my problem and start my division. So if there's a decimal in the house, raise it to the roof. If it helps you to rewrite this as 62 and 6/10 divided by 23, you can rewrite it too. I'm just going to stick with this one though. So now I'm going to look over at my table. I need to get 23 into 62, but I cannot go over it. So that is going to be twice. 2 times 23 is 46. When I subtract, I get 16. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. So I need to get as close to 166 without going over it. So I'm going to go over to my table and I'm going to get to 7. Multiply 7 times 23. I already did that in my chart and I got 161. Subtract, you get 5. If I add a trailing 0, bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 23 into 50, go over here. I cannot go over 50, so I'm going to get to 46. And how many times was that? That was twice. Multiply 2 times 2 times 23, 46. Subtract, and I get 4. I could keep going. I'm going to stop though because I know that this is going to be less than 5, this number. So that would round that to, it would stay the same. So 2 and 72/100ths is my answer. Typically I'll only ask you to go to the 100th spot, so that's why I stopped there. Okay, the next example we have 80 and 8/10 divided by 4 and 2/10. So I cannot have a decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to move it over one spot to the right to make it 42. If I move it over once here, I need to move it over once here. So I have now 808 divided by 42. If there's a decimal in the house, raise it to the roof. And I can go ahead and make my table here if I want. Remember, on the left we do 1 through 9. And on the right side, it's essentially taking your divisor and multiplying it by all of these numbers. So you're finding the multiples of 42. So 1 times 42 is 42. 2 times 42 is 84. 42 times 3 is 126. 42 times 4, let's say I don't know that, I can come over here and do that on the side real quick. I get 168. Let's say I don't know 42 times 5, I can come over here and do that really quick. I get 210. I'm going to keep going, 42 times 6. Or I could just add 42 here, which this one might be easier to just add 42. 252. 252 plus 42, 294. 42 times 8, 336. And 42 times 9 is 378. Okay, so now I can come back to my original problem and just do my division like I normally would. So 42 into 8 cannot happen. 42 into 80. Come over here, I cannot go above 80. So that leaves me with 1. 1 times 42 is 42. Subtract, and I get 38. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 388 divided by 42. So I'm trying to get as close to 388 without going over it. That would be 9 times. 9 times 42, well, I already did that over here, it's 378. Subtract and I get 10. I can add as many trailing zeros as I want, it won't change the value. Bring it down and bring it on back, divide. 100 divided by 42. Again, I'm trying to get as close to 100 without going over it, so that would be twice. Multiply. 2 times 42 is 84. Subtract, and I get 16. Bring it down and bring it on back, divide. As close to 160 without going over would be 126. That's 3 times. 3 times 42, 126. Subtract 34. And you can see this will keep going too. I'm only trying to get to the 100th spot, so I'm going to stop there at 19 and 23/100ths. Let me just go back and reiterate how important it is to, when you're doing your division, like 42 into 80, that can only go on one time. So it's important that I write my 1 in my quotient above the number that it went into. So you can see 42 into 80 went in once. I need to have that right over the 0. And then I have, how many times can 42 go into 388? That would be 9 times. So it's right above that digit. This just helps us to keep it organized, and you know, the decimal stays in the right spot then. Alright, so we have 84 1/10 divided by 3 2/10. So I can't have a decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to move it over once to the right. If I do it there, I need to do it in my dividend. So now I have 841 divided by 32. If I wanted to, I can come over here and make my chart of multiples. You don't need to do this. If you're good at guessing and checking, that's fine with me. It helps me though. This takes care of half the work. So I do it this way. You don't have to do it. This isn't necessarily how I learned how to do it. I learned by guessing and checking. But a lot of guessing and checking takes a lot of time. This just, once you make the table, it makes it really quick. So again, here we just have the numbers 1 through 9. On the right side, we are going to multiply these numbers by 32. So 1 times 32 is 32. 2 times 32 is 64. This is going to be 96. You can just see I'm adding 32 to this number every time. $160, $192, $224, $256, and then last but not least, 288. So now I can just come over here and do the division like I normally would. If there's a decimal in the house, raise it to the roof. 32 cannot go into 8. 32 into 84 would be the next one. So this is important where we write that answer right over the 4, because I'm going to have another digit over the 1. So look over here. I need to get as close to 84 without going over it, and that would be, you can go in twice. Multiply, 2 times 32 is 64. Subtract, I get 20. Bring it down and bring it on back, divide. 201 divided by 32. Trying to get as close to 201 without going over, and that would be 6 times. Multiply, 6 times 32 is 192. Subtract, I get 9. I'm going to add some trillion zeros here. Bring it down and bring it on back, divide. 90 divided by 32. I can't go over 90, so that would be twice. Multiply, 2 times 32, 64. Subtract, I get 26. Bring it down and bring it on back, divide. 260 divided by 32. Can't go over 260, so the closest would be 8. Multiply, 8 times 32 is 256. Subtract, and I get 4. Again, I could keep going, but I'm going to stop there because we got to the 100th spot. So that is 26 and 28/100ths. This next slide here says the next 4 problems do on your own and get them checked by Miss Hunter. This is outdated. We're going to change that to Mrs. Quinn when you are done. So what I would recommend doing is pausing the video and unpausing it after you do the 4 problems, just to make sure you got them correct. When you have gotten them checked by me, there is some pages on the back for homework that you can start. So yeah, pause the video. When you're done with these next 4 problems, unpause it and see if you got them right. Okay, so you should have completed these next 4 problems, so now you're checking them. So I'm not going to make a table, I'm just going to go through the answers. This is going to be 12, 64, and 9/10 divided by 12. 12 can go into 64 5 times. Multiply. 5 times 12 is 60. Subtract. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 12 can go into 49 4 times. 4 times 12 is 48. Subtract. 10. So your answer, you should have gotten 5 4/10 or 5 40/100ths. The next one, change this to 31, change this to 533, raise the decimal to the roof. 31 can go into 53 once, multiply, subtract, bring it down and bring it on back. 223 divided by 31, that's 7 times. 7 times 31 is 217. Subtract, you get 6. Add some trillion zeros. Bring it down and bring it on back. 31 can go into 60 only one time. 1 times 31 is 31. Subtract, and we get 29. Bring it down and bring it on back. 290 divided by 31, that can go in 9 times. 9 times 31 is 279. Subtract, and you get 11. I could keep going, but I'm going to stop here at 17 and 19/100ths. Alright, these last 2, I'm going to change 4.3 to 43, and 7 to 70. If there's a decimal in the house, raise it to the roof. 43 can go into 70 only once. 1 times 43 is 43. Subtract, and we get 27. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 43 can go into 276 times. Again, it might be helpful for you to make that chart if you're not getting answers that match. Make the multiples chart and then see where you are. So 6 times 43 is 258. When I subtract, I get 12. Add some trillion zeros, bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 120 divided by 43, that can go in twice. 2 times 43 is 86. I get 34. I could keep going, but I'm at my 100th spot, so I'm going to stop at 1 62/100ths. Alright, last one. Change 1.3 to 13, and change 8 47/100ths to 84 7/10ths. If there's a decimal in the house, raise it to the roof and start your division. 13 can go into 84 6 times. 6 times 13 is 78. Subtract, and I get 6. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 67 divided by 13, that can go in 5 times. 5 times 13, 65. Subtract, and I get 2. Bring it down and bring it on back. Divide. 13 can go into 20 once. 1 times 13 is 13. Subtract, and I get 7. You could keep going, but I'm at my 100th spot, so I'm going to stop at 6 51/100ths. So if you have any questions, let me know, but let me see your work. When I have checked off that you've completed that, I want you to start on this. It will take you some time. That's okay. I want you to take that time And do this because it is important that we're ready for our test.